Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on into another episode of Fantasy Daily. I, as always, am your host, Nathan Passwell, joined once and again by my loyal co-host and lead analyst, John Landry. John Landry, how you feeling today?
Pretty excited. We're going to start talking about running backs, so it's always fun, especially with this year and having such a thin pool of running backs. So hopefully we drop some good wisdom out there for everybody.
Running backs. I am more than ecstatic for this show. I'm probably a lot more excited about this show than the wide receiver show, even though I'm typically kind of a wide receiver first fantasy player. I'm very excited about it because, like you said, the running back pool this year is very, very thin. So it's important to find those key players that you're confident on later on in the draft. And I do believe there are a few key players that me and John are going to talk about tonight or this morning for you whenever you're listening. There's going to be a few of those players that we're talking about each. We're each same exact as the wide receiver show. If you guys haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that out. We uploaded that yesterday. But same exact format, 3 wide receivers on that show, 3 running backs each on this show. So me and John are going to do the same exact thing here tonight. And I think a lot of these players that we're going to talk about, and actually probably every single player that we talk about, has that potential to be a late end guy that nobody's really talking about and returns you big, big value. So before we get into the running back sleeper show, speaking of the wide receiver sleeper show, we had a point that got cut off yesterday, as if you saw the little kind of Easter egg in the wide receiver sleeper show. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and check that out. But John, let us talk about Tyler Lockett and Geno Smith, which we did not get a chance to talk about at the conclusion of yesterday's show. So I will let you take the lead on this one to start.
So first off, I'm hoping we see a Drew Lockett connection. That'd be pretty nice. That'd be nice. Yeah, you said that. I didn't come up with that. You just said that. But
I did?
Yeah. So Tyler Lockett, I mean, looking last year, he finished wide receiver 10 standard, 15 PPR. That is top tier. This year, it ain't going to be like that. It's said that Geno's going to start. I expect Geno to start, Drew Lock to finish. But who knows, because they both aren't good quarterbacks. But I want Tyler Lockett to be a sleeper. I really know he has that potential, like, as me and Nathan both wear Edelman jerseys, he's got that kind of value. Like, he can just get peppered with targets and get the receptions. And I know, as being a Lockett holder almost every year, that it can be boom or bust with Lockett. I remember week 13, 2019, I needed half a point against Manny, and Lockett put up 3 targets, 0 receptions. So I've felt the burn with Lockett before. But I'm hoping, because Drew Lock, when Cortland Sutton wasn't there, Jerry Jeudy was this guy. And coming into this new offense, it's going to be Sutton as Metcalf and Jeudy as Lockett. So I'm hoping he can transition over and give Lockett the respect he deserves. So I'm hoping he's going to be a sleeper. It doesn't like to pan out that way. Tyler Lockett's going near the end of the 8th round. He's probably not going to finish like that, but, fingers crossed. I just want to hear that.
Yeah, and it's funny, you bring up the Edelman jerseys. I completely forgot that we're both rocking Edelman jerseys. I'm wearing the home, you're wearing the away. How crazy is that? So, unintentional, completely unintentional. That's so hilarious that we both jumped on to the chat at the same time for the show, and we're both wearing the same jerseys, so that's hilarious. But yeah, so just to cover Tyler Lockett real quick, and like you said, he's going in the 8th round, and for me, it's really, I don't see myself leaving any draft this year, or any time in that round where I'd be looking for, kind of the depth of running back and wide receiver. I don't see myself leaving the drafts with Tyler Lockett at all. And, speaking of last week and kind of, referencing what we had last week on the shows when we were talking about the Draft or Pass episode that was built on the undraftables, while talking about it, I find Tyler Lockett in my realm of undraftables, where as much as I hope and I want him to reclaim some of this former glory, it's a lot for me like the George Kittle syndrome, where it's almost the same exact thing every year, where I'm constantly chasing the tail on these points, and I want this to be true. I want these players to be good, and they should be good. They should be returning this value, but the consistency isn't there. And obviously, you're saying, he's going in the 8th round. He's probably going to outperform that ADP there, and if Drew Lock is going to hyper-target him, or if Geno Smith's going to hyper-target him, he's going to be the more value wide receiver. Now, to your point, I do believe that DK Metcalf is completely overvalued. He's wildly overrated in fantasy football when it comes to consistency and where he's going at in drafts. I think that's another one of those situations where the talent on field, you see it there, you say, that should equate to fantasy football points, and it doesn't, it doesn't always work out that way. So, as much as Tyler Lockett, if there were a wide receiver 1 on that team, in week 10, you're telling me he's a number 1, my money would be on Lockett. It wouldn't be on Metcalf, and that's probably how it's going to be basically from now until, they get a quarterback that we can really trust in. So, I do like what you're saying there. He's going to outperform his ADP. But yeah, I'm tough chasing the tails on that one. All right, so let's move right on into the running back sleepers for today. And since John was so humble on going first yesterday, I will take the lead here tonight on the show. And we are going to kick it off with what I feel is a guaranteed sleeper that you can buy into, and you can even, and we don't say this ever, we very rarely say this, especially going into draft season. It's very difficult to say this and, kind of stake your flag on it, but I believe that you can reach up in drafts to get this running back that you're going to want on your team. And it is Seattle Seahawks running back Rashad Penny. Now, you've heard, if you listen to the show for the last couple of weeks, I'm over the moon about Rashad Penny this year. I am so pumped about it. And for the 9th round, are you serious? Here it comes. So before I get into this, let me preface Ken Walker. His current ADP is the 5th round. And to be honest, this ADP and this situation with Ken Walker, it's got signs of deja vu to it, where it's a high draft capital, or it's a player who you think is the best running back on the team, and they should slot him in day 1, or at least give him the majority of the work, and he could automatically turn around the run game, especially for a team who rushes the ball so much. It could be an instant impact player. Oh wait, that player that we're having deja vu about is Rashad Penny. It's the player that we've waited 2 years to watch him finally get a full portion of workload to himself without having to share with Chris Carson. And as soon as he does last year, we've already talked about it on the show, but I'm going to keep rambling about it all off season in hopes that you guys are listening. He was the running back 1 from weeks 14 through 18. Now, Jonathan Taylor did have a week 14 bye week, but he was active all week 15, 16, 17, and 18, and Penny was still the running back 1. Rashad Penny won fantasy leagues for people, and we almost forget about him all the time. Now, I understand that the stigma is there because he is a Seattle Seahawk. Russell Wilson is gone. Everybody's fighting the fight of, is it Tyler Lockett or is it DK Metcalf? And Rashad Penny often becomes the forgotten man. Chris Carson is gone. He has retired. They have Ken Walker there, but I do feel like Rashad Penny, with the Pete Carroll loyalty like we talked about with Chris Carson, he's, that Chris Carson might not have been the best running back for that team throughout the year, and you could see it as soon as Rashad Penny got the ball. But Pete Carroll is super loyal to his players, and I think that is exactly what we're going to see in Rashad Penny. Pete Carroll is going to be super loyal to him. He's going to give him the chance to be the starter and the number 1 on the team, and I think Rashad Penny does exactly what you saw him do at the end of the season. He grabs that opportunity, and he runs with it. So for his ADP at the 9th round, for a player that you can put in your flex in a 12-man league, that's absolutely insanity. I do believe that Rashad Penny has the potential to be a top 7 running back by the end of the season. So, John, anything you want to say about Rashad Penny before you move on to your first running back?
I think it's important to note that the dead zone for running backs is huge this year. So, Rashad Penny is worth drafting up for. It says 9th round. I bet you come draft time that'll probably balance up to maybe 6th, 7th round, and I wouldn't be surprised if Walker it's almost like a Sutton Judy deal, but I'm taking the shot on Penny because Pete Carroll likes his homeboys, so I'll take Penny over Walker.
Alrighty, yeah, and I'm crazy about it. Just like you said, those ADPs will jump, but that dead zone that's really there for running backs, it's a deep dead zone. So I don't feel bad if I'm confident at wide receiver, if I'm confident at tight end. I don't feel bad about reaching up to get those players that I really want in those rounds, especially when it comes to drafting somebody who you're confident in the 7th round when you're already feel pretty established. So we love the Rashad Penny, John. Why don't you roll on with your first running back?
So, my first running back is, it's hard to say it's a sleeper because he's being drafted right now at the 211, so at the end of the 2nd round. So you're getting almost an elite talent. But I want to talk about Sequon Barkley. When he was a rookie, he came in with the biggest hype I think I've ever seen in football regarding rookie running backs. I was lucky enough to draft him that year. Also drafted Todd Gurley. I think they were running back 1 or 2. That's irrelevant. But I want to point out some things that make me feel like he's going to kind of be a top 8 running back this year. He only played 13 games last year. He was RB 30 in PPR in 13 games, so that's reasonable. Last year was his first season back from ACL MCL tear, so the first year back is never gonna be full speed. Like, you got to take time to get back into the motion to get that muscle memory in there, and he's got some big muscle to hold a lot of memory. He's got the biggest quads in the league, so not to mention the depth behind Barkley. We have Matt Breida, and that's it. And he's not a great talent. So Barkley's going to get the workload. That's been the reports that they're going to use him like he was meant to be. Now that he's had time to recover, he's got his athletic profile is monstrous. I mean, he had the top speed in his draft that year. He's got a 4.4 40, so that's it's nice that the Giants O-line kind of made some improvements. I know I talked about a Giant player yesterday. I'll remind about the same things. New O-line, new coaching staff. They drafted Evan Neal this year with the 7th overall, and he's a good run blocker. So they picked pieces for Barkley to succeed. And I just want to talk about his stats over a 17-game projection. He finished 146 points in PPR, but over a 17-game projection, he would have had 226 touches, 827 yards, 3 touchdowns, 81 targets, 58 receptions, 372 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Now that's estimate. I mean, you give or take, but he would have finished at least running back 14 at that pace. So if that's before the upgrade at right tackle and his left tackle improving as well, there's no reason to believe that Barkley can't finish above his ADP, which is 211. So I'm willing to draft Barkley end of the 1st, turn into the 2nd. So I believe that Barkley can put up great numbers this year.
Yeah, I think personally when you talk about Barkley, and he probably feels it within himself, but the whole world is watching, and the whole NFL community and everybody who's a fan of football, the Giants, and even probably, like I said, Barkley himself are saying prove it this year. If you were really that guy, then this is your year to do it. And I do think Barkley has the chance to get a ton of carries this year and return to form in the form that we like to see him in. So I do think the opportunity is there. I like his draft price, absolutely, especially if you're in a 12-man league and you're looking for that second running back or maybe even your first running back, depending on who's left in the draft, and you have to grab somebody. I don't hate it. But I do think that Sequon Barkley has a lot to prove, and it's, a lot of it's going to be internal this year when it comes to him playing, where he's going to have to try to make that bounce back. Alrighty, so let us move right into my next running back for the season, and that is Denver Broncos running back Melvin Gordon, not Javonte Williams. And the reason I am bringing this player up is because of a lot of the camp reports that I'm hearing already, where Javonte Williams is going to get 70% of the work, and then it's adjusted down to 60% or 65%, whatever the heck it was. But a lot of the, rumor mills and all the talk about it is that Melvin Gordon was brought back to be an accessory piece and Javonte Williams is going to be the lead back for this year. And I just don't buy it. I really just don't buy the hype that they think that all of a sudden they have Russell Wilson there and now they have everything figured out. They're going to be able to do exactly what they want to do, and they're going to be able to put Javonte into situations that they exactly want to put him in. I really it's hard to follow the money on this one because it's just a 1-year deal for $2.5 million. So for somebody like Melvin Gordon, I feel like that's not a crazy deal saying, hey, you're going to come in here and, do a ton. But he's going to be involved for them to bring him back for 1 year and $2.5 million. He's going to be involved, and I do think that there are going to be dedicated drives for them, not just third down or situational work. I do believe it's going to be much of the same that we saw last year, where they have dedicated drives or they bring in Melvin Gordon for, certain situations and then he controls the whole drive and Javonte only gets 15 carries that game. So Javonte currently going in the, I think second or third round in 12-man leagues. It's difficult for me to ever want to take Javonte that high when we're talking about the wide receivers, tight ends, and running backs that are still left there, because Melvin Gordon isn't just going to disappear. And I feel like right now, outside of the Russell Wilson talk, it's all Javonte Williams and nothing Melvin Gordon. So when you're talking about the running backs, I hear a lot of Javonte Williams, nothing for Melvin Gordon, and I think a lot of the expectation is that Javonte is going to turn into a running back one this season. And as much as I called it at the end of last year and said, here it comes, as soon as Melvin Gordon leaves, Javonte Williams is going to be a running back one, and I believe in that. Now Melvin Gordon's back. And Melvin Gordon, if you guys don't remember when he played in San Diego, he was an absolute stud. When he plays, he's an absolute stud. When he played last year, he was a beast. He's still a beast of a running back. It's not like he's, on his way out and kind of just journeymaning around until he kicks the dust. He still can bring, a fantasy relevant game. He can still bring NFL caliber plays. So I like Melvin Gordon's draft price. I think he's currently going in like the 10th or 11th round, which is super low for me. I love the idea that he could come in and be a top 15 running back again if he shares with Javonte. I do believe that this team can support like all the offensive players that they want. I think Melvin Gordon can have top 15 weeks, not finish this season top 15. So I do believe that Melvin Gordon, if you pick him up late and he's hanging out on your bench for your bye weeks or some flex spots or something like that, I think it's going to be a lot like we saw last year. So Gordon is going currently in the 9th round, but I do believe that that will be an absolutely beautiful return. So if you're getting Rashad Penny in the 7th, Melvin Gordon in the 9th, I think you're hanging out cool on running back depth. John, how do you feel about Melvin Gordon, or do you want to just skip to your point, to your next player, whatever it may be? It is your turn to speak.
I think it's important to note that a report came out today from the offensive coordinator that both Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon will be on pitch counts.
See, it's every day. It's every day there's something different. So, I just don't buy the Denver speak of, hey, here's what we're going to do this year. I feel like you guys got Russell Wilson and never had a plan for what you were going to do when you got him. So, now they're just scrambling to figure out what their game plan is for the entire year.
Yeah, they're like the dog that finally caught the car. They don't know what to do once they get the car. But, Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams literally split carries, 203 apiece. And then when it comes to targets, Javonte Williams had 15 more targets. That's a 50-50. It's not perfect, but it's an even workload. So there's no reason to believe, besides maybe age, that they couldn't do that again. It worked last year. Why fix something that's not broken? So if Melvin Gordon's going to put up top weeks, I was saying if Melvin Gordon can put up top weeks again, he's easily valuable mid 9th round.
Absolutely. I think Melvin Gordon might be the next Frank Gore, the guy who just doesn't seem to go away, and he just keeps getting it done. And as much as you think, all right, it's over, he just keeps signing these 1-year deals, except a lot of them are fantasy relevant. So Melvin Gordon, like you said, they're going to keep sharing carries, and with the amount of back and forth in that camp and that club over there, I think it's going to be much of the same.
So Melvin Gordon is an RB2 on a team where he shares RB1 status. My running back is the clear-cut RB2 on the team who can earn RB1 status with the workload he might be able to get this year, and that is A.J. Dillon. Currently, he's going in the middle of the 6th round, so about ADP 66. Last year, he finished 23rd in PPR. So our RB2 that finished 23rd in PPR is excellent. Kind of like Melvin Gordon, who I believe was 15. Big things to know about Green Bay Packers is they lost Devontae Adams and they lost MVS. So that's over 200 targets and over 2,000 air yards or total yards, whatever, gone. Need to be made up somewhere. And more often than not, if they can't get stud wide receivers, which according to what I see on their team, there are no stud wide receivers. That's not to say Lazard can't put up. Cobb and Rodgers have a long history, so I expect Cobb to have that week or two where he booms, and then he has Watkins, who's going to start off the season as top 10 wide receiver and then play injured the rest of the year. But it's important to note that a lot of missing work usually falls back into the backfield, and while Jones is definitely going to be a big beneficiary of that, so is A.J. Dillon. A.J. Dillon is a big dude. He is 250 pounds. He's a big back. So with that being said, him and Jones both split the goal line carries last year. And that's great for fantasy. When you get goal line carries, if you're the 3-down back but can't get goal line carries, you're almost worthless because you want that touchdown. But last year he had a 42% snap share, so that's huge for an RB2. I know he had a slow start in 2001, but that's because he fractured his rib. But last year, slow start in the beginning of 2001 because of a fractured rib, which I think occurred in preseason. But near the end of the season, he had really turned it up. He had over 1,100 total yards and 7 touchdowns. So going where he's going in the draft, he's going above several starters. I think he's going above Damien Harris. He's going above the whole Texas backfield. I think he might be going above Miami's backfield. I think Chase Edmonds might be on the rise, but where he is, if you can make it through the first few rounds with a solid running back and 2 good running backs, A.J. Dillon might be worth taking that shot on because he can return on that investment. God forbid Jones would ever go down. He would shoot right to the top of the list. So he's worth keeping an eye on to be able to put up points when called upon.
Right, and I just I'm glad that you brought this one up because there's been a lot of feelings for me bubbling this year and this off season, and just little things that I'm looking at and little things that I'm feeling. And the way that you look at A.J. Dillon, he is a clear-cut running back one for any NFL team. I feel like he's the running back one, and he could, hang with Aaron Jones any single day on being the running back one. But let's talk about Aaron Jones' contract a little bit because this is what I wanted to add to what John was saying. So currently, you remember the 4 years, $48 million deal that Aaron Jones signed at the end of 2020. So currently, they've paid out 19 of that $48 million. Next season, they owe him 16 and a half more of that. If they were to let him go, they would hit a dead cap space of 9.5 next year on top of whatever they're paying him. So they're going to lose a lot of money on keeping Aaron Jones and then having to sign A.J. Dillon about a year or so from now. I'm not saying that I am sure it's going to happen, but I don't believe Aaron Jones plays for Green Bay next year. And I think there's a reality where Matt LaFleur and that team make a trade involving Aaron Jones at some point before next season, before the official league year. So whether it be in the offseason or the beginning of this season, I don't think Aaron Jones plays for Green Bay anymore. I think A.J. Dillon has been knocking out the door. And to your point, John, just the amazing, 1v1 that it kind of is on that team, that it could be. I really do think that A.J. Dillon can kind of just shoulder Aaron Jones out of the way. The team can save a ton of money, trade him, get something for him, and just everything makes sense, especially year after removed from getting rid of somebody like Devontae Adams. So, yeah, I love it, John. I love the pick there. And yeah, like I said, I don't think the future's bright in Green Bay for Aaron Jones. I think he's going to get shouldered out of his position, and I don't believe he plays in Green Bay next year. Alrighty. Moving myself on to my favorite player that I wanted to speak about tonight, besides Rashad Penny. Too many favorites. Everything's my favorite. This is my show. This is my favorite. This is my friend John. He's my favorite. This is everything. I love it. So let us get right into it because I'm too excited about this one, but at the same exact time, I don't want to put all my eggs in this basket and then it blow up in my face and it's a load of nothing. But this is my true deep sleeper pick of the year, a name that nobody is talking about, likely because he is a Texan and he is a running back for the Texans. But we are talking about Damien Pierce, the newly drafted Houston Texan, and I think he is the definition of the NFL sleeper at the moment. And when you look at his game film and highlights, there's moments where he really pulls you back and you say, whoa, like that was NFL caliber. Now, usually when you're watching highlights, they're all from college, so it's hard to decipher, how it's going to translate into the NFL. But then there's certain moments every now and again, like you said, John, Sequon Barkley was the most hyped running back. It was because when you saw his plays, they were NFL-style plays. He was a boy, he was a man against boys out there playing in college football, and he was absolutely destroying everybody. There's plays where Damien Pierce has. There's goal line stands where Damien Pierce, you watch him play and he's not getting in. You're like, holy crap, he got in. So he looks like an NFL caliber player to go right now. He had 13 touchdowns on 100 carries last year in his senior years of college. He has the next level look, and on a team right now, the Houston Texans, where he ended up, they are just hoping and praying that anybody emerges as a super talent, like they're hoping in Davis Mills like they got. They're just hoping for sleeper players to emerge in camp and, just kind of force him into the running back one role or the wide receiver one role, quarterback one role, whatever it is, and hope that something happens. So I do believe that Damien Pierce really has early chance to be the starter in Houston early as week 1. The early reports are that he looks very good and he looks a lot better than any other running back out there, which are all veteran players. I think Rex Burkhead's still over there, Marlon Mack's over there. So there's veteran players that are playing there, and Damien Pierce is apparently making them all look bad. So hopefully he gets the week 1 nod. He is actually the player I am most excited to see play this Saturday in preseason. I'm really looking forward to watching Houston play because I want to see Damien Pierce play. But I do believe this is my true sleeper pick of the year. I love Damien Pierce this season. And I think he could be a player that goes off the board at, probably the 16th or 17th round I think he's currently going at. And I'm all over it. I would love to have Damien Pierce. I think that, the metrics when you're watching him, he passes that test when you're saying, I think this guy's good enough to, be. But I'm all over it, especially at his ADP, 16, 17, wherever he's going. I think just from watching him, he could be a guy who returns value. Obviously, he's not going to be, a top-end guy, but I could see him being an Antonio Gibson from last year where he has, a top 20 finish at the end of the year, but he has different, weeks where he pops off. So loving Damien Pierce going into the season. That is my final running back, and we will give John the floor for his last running back before we close out the show. John, who do you got?
Before I move on to what I consider is a crazy sleeper for me to ever talk about, to ever discuss wanting to draft, given my position on this, Damien Pierce is listed as RB2 behind Marlon Mack, but Marlon Mack had the Achilles injury, so he's not going to have a stellar season. And then Rex Burkhead is 32, so he's literally just there in case both running backs get hurt. Now, granted, he's going to get a little bit of work here and there, but Yeah, Damien Pierce is going to end up being the RB1 on this team. Like, there's no other way around it.
Right, and he's almost forgotten about. Like, nobody's talking about the Texan Damien Pierce, and he wasn't a high draft pick, I'm pretty sure. I think he was like second day or third day. But I'm all about Damien Pierce. I think he could be the best running back that comes out of this draft, and that's Breece Hall considered. Team structure makes a big difference, but I think that Damien Pierce could be the guy that we're all talking about in week 3 or 4 for your waiver wires. But since you watch Fantasy Daily, you already drafted him. So go on ahead, John, with your last pick here.
So I made it clear last week that I do not draft Patriot players. Julian Edelman, ironically, was probably the only draftable player that I can think of since, maybe Randy Moss times.
Gronk.
Well, yeah, you're right, Gronk. If he could stay healthy, Gronk. But I want to talk about Ramadree Stevenson. Ramadree was a rookie last year. And for a rookie to be in the New England system and to finish with as good of stats as he did now, he was only running back 47. He was running back 47 with being RB2 with not given the workload that he's able to carry. He only played 12 games. I like to call it 11 because one game he had 1 attempt, 1 target. So he really didn't play that game. But if you can spread his stats over the 17-game projection, he would have been running back 23. And that's with Harris there. Like I said, played a ton as a rookie. The last rookie to really play was Sony Michel. We all know that didn't pan out. James White, when he was a rookie, he only got 14 touches. And the running back they drafted 2 or 3 years ago, Pierre Harris or something like that, he only got 4 touches. So Ramadre Stevenson to come in and get, 150 touches, he's clearly going to be a part of this system. I think Harris is in his contract year. The big talk about that is that they're likely going to trade him or really not release him. I mean, he was RB15 last year, but he's likely not going to play for the Patriots next year. So that means Stevenson is up. Stevenson is a big dude. He's 6 feet. He's 230 pounds. That's a large guy. Like, I compared that to LeGarrette Blount. He's a big dude.
I was actually, to stop you real quick, that's actually what I just looked up on my computer, that LeGarrette Blount is 6 feet, 247, and it kind of feels like Belichick's been waiting on that Blount replacement for a long time.
Yep. Yeah, no, he's that big body. Like, he's no Jerome Bettis, but, like, he's a big body player. So, when it comes to carries on the inside, Damien Harris had 30 carries on the inside, resulted in 11 touchdowns, which is great. Harris had 15 touchdowns, and it seems like 11 of them came from within inside the 10. Everybody knows Patriots have a great offensive line. So Ramadre only got 11 carries, a little more than a third of the work, and he had 5 touchdowns. At that ratio, if Ramadre had 30 carries, he would have had more than 11 touchdowns. There was only one game last season, I believe, where Harris didn't play at all, for whatever reason, and Stevenson was the not only de facto running back 1, he was the running back 1. They didn't really give too much work anywhere else, and he put up 20 for 100 and 2 touchdowns against Cleveland, who was at the time an above average defense against the runs. Some more specialized stats is he was the 3rd in yards after catch per reception. So that means when he runs his route and he catches the ball, he is behind 2 other players in the most amount of yards he can gain. And those 2 players were James Conner and Jonathan Taylor. Huge running back names going up in the first round and 3rd round. And then he was one of only 3 players to have 15% of their touches be more than 10 yards on the ground or 20-yard catches through the air. And those other players, the other 2 players, Nick Chubb and Nate's fantasy favorite this year, Rashad Penny. So there is great potential here for Stevenson to excel way past his ADP of 106. I got him on this draft board. He is 10-2, so beginning of the 10th round. So for somebody who's being set up for success, he might be worth considering throwing on your bench, because when Harris goes down, he clearly can perform.
Yeah, I gotta say, as much as I can't stand Patriots running backs, I didn't see this show doc before you put it together, and you're almost winning me over on Ramadree Stevenson being that kind of LeGarrette Blount replacement that they've been waiting for so long, because, yeah, there's some good numbers that I'm seeing here, especially that yards after catch or yards after run at 10-4. That's wild. I did not know that, and he didn't. He had an isolated amount of work, but I don't believe that number is an anomaly because of his isolation of work. I do believe that Ramadree Stevenson truly does have that. And they drafted Pierre Strong this year, so like you said, I think a lot of people out there are going to say, oh, well, if you want Ramadree Stevenson, what about Pierre Strong? I think it's important to highlight John's beginning point in that is that they don't play rookies that, high, uncommon, and Ramadree Stevenson wasn't a drafted rookie. He was an undrafted player, and you know how much Patriots love their undrafted players that they don't have to play or, pay, and they can kind of, run into the ground as they feel fit. So those are our running back sleepers for the evening. I have Rashad Penny, Melvin Gordon, and my ever so excited Damien Pierce for this season. John Landry, who did you have before we sign off?
I have Saquads, A.J. Dillon, and my recent favorite, Ramadree Stevenson.
Yep. I think it's a good list, man. I love all 6 of these. I love the wide receiver and the running back sleeper show that we've put together so far, the players that have been on there. And this has been a fun series, overwhelmingly fun, especially since last week we did the draft or pass episodes, which I liked a lot, the mock draft. So if you guys haven't seen those, go ahead and check those out. But as always, I am Nathan Passwell, joined by my friend John Landry. And we will see you tomorrow, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day, good night, whatever time you're watching. Take care. Bye-bye.